Today I'm joined by Tim Shurr, Mind Architect. Tim, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Karen. Thanks for having me on your show.
It's my pleasure. So the first question that comes on top of the mind is, what is a mind architect?
Yes. So architects build inevitability, right? They design systems that are going to succeed. And I do that for the human mind, for the human operating system. So I've spent 36 years walking around in people's unconscious minds, the part of our mind that stores our beliefs, our values, that runs our habits, and that causes us to think, feel, and behave the way that we do, even if we know that it's not good for us. And so I've figured out how to get in there and retrain the brain and optimize people for success, especially leaders and high achievers. So that's what I do. And I'm excited to share after I facilitated 16,000 sessions over my career. So I'm excited to share with you what I learned during that time.
Before we dig into the details, can you take us back a little bit and share how you got started down this path?
Yeah, well, by accident. I had a lot of anxiety. I had a lot of fear and worry. I wish I could say that I set out to try to save the world, but I was just trying to figure out my own and get rid of the anxiety and the fears and that sense of not being good enough and imposter syndrome and always trying to, chase approval. And I didn't want to live that way. And so I went to school for psychology. And my second year I was in a counseling processes class, and they were bringing guest speakers in to share what they were doing. And one was a hypnotherapist. Now, I didn't know anything about hypnosis except it makes you cluck like a chicken. So my way of chasing approval was trying to be the class clown. So I volunteered, but I didn't start clucking. What I started doing was experiencing a sense of peace that I had never felt before. It was like this knot in my stomach disappeared, and I'm like, what is going on? And I heard people giggling, and I didn't care because I was so peaceful inside. And then the hypnotist said that I would have a lot of confidence that whole week, and that whole week I did. And then it kind of wore off, right? And I went back to the anxiety again. And because I thought that it just wore off, I didn't realize that I was keeping the anxiety going just without knowing it. And so I'm like, well, what is this? And so that opened the door to all these other peak performance strategies or modalities. And so I got certified as a hypnotherapist, and then I took NLP, neuro linguistic programming classes, the kind of stuff that made Tony Robbins famous, and then just kept learning every kind of tool and strategy there was, applying them to myself, applying them with my clients. And I was just kind of obsessed. I wanted to end needless emotional suffering for as many people as possible because I know how much that hurts. And so I've been doing it ever since. And it's pretty amazing how powerful your mind is, and it's also pretty sad how most people, including the experts of our world, don't know how to get in there and really upgrade your beliefs. They can help you be very aware of what the problem is, but very few people know how to actually fix it.
So interesting. So how do you fix it, and how do you work with people to change these beliefs and change how their mind works?
Yeah, excellent question. When I was learning hypnosis, I thought that the trick was to get someone into a trance, right? It was just a focus state. It's just a focused state of attention. Everybody gets hypnotized twice a day. Right before you fall asleep at night, right before you wake up in the morning, you're in that lower alpha theta brainwave state, which is what we call a trance. And so the idea was if you get someone deep enough in hypnosis, then you can just give them affirmations. And because they're more suggestible and more open to suggestion, they'll take it and run with it. And so that's what I did. And I found that people would do well for a while and then it would fade off, or fade away, or they relapse. And so I was trying to figure out, why does that happen? And then I was using my talk therapy skills. And a lot of people will say I was in therapy for 20 years and didn't really feel any better. Right. And so what happens is that it's like our mind is like a mental garden, and every garden has flowers and weeds. And a lot of people have a lot of weeds in their mind and they don't know how to get rid of them. And so we go to a therapist, and not all therapists, some therapists are incredibly talented and powerful, but a lot of them are just, talking about the problems. And that's like cutting the top off of a weed. And so then we don't know what to do. So we go to pharmaceuticals, or we try to self-medicate with sugar or alcohol, nicotine, things like that. And that's like throwing dirt on top of the weeds. It's not actually doing anything to get to the root of the problem. And so what I learned to do was find those unconscious beliefs, because your mind goes through experiences. Some are good and empowering and some are not. And so your brain is always trying to make sense of things. So it starts to make up these beliefs without your permission, without your awareness often. Most of the beliefs that are driving us right now as adults were formed when we were kids, when we were 5, 6, 7 years old. And so we have these childish beliefs driving us as adults. And when adults get stressed, you can see that come out real clear. So I found that you got to pull those beliefs like weeds. You got to pull them out at the root and then replace them with a flower. So I started finding ways to get to those limiting beliefs and then replace them through a new emotional experience, because that's how the old beliefs were formed, through a new emotional experience, and then upgrade the belief. So one of the biggest beliefs that we have, limiting beliefs, is that I'm not good enough. That's where burnout, imposter syndrome, what I call achiever syndrome comes from. That fear that you can never let off the gas because things will fall apart, or people will blindside you, or you'll miss out on opportunities. And so it causes us to always be on all the time, always getting stressed out. And so it comes from that fear of not being enough, that I'm not going to be okay, that I'm not safe, that I'm not going to be loved if I'm not performing or successful or whatever. It's powerful, right? So I learned how to find those beliefs and upgrade them so that what used to take months or years now can happen in 30 minutes.
That's amazing. And who do you work primarily with these days?
I would say most of my private practice is filled with high achievers, high achieving business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders, executives, CEOs, people in high stakes situations, because a lot of times these people don't have anybody. They have a hard time letting their guards down. I have certain people that are like, I just need a place to dump my poison. Right? I need a place where I can come and talk and not be judged and not be afraid that someone's gonna use it against me, right? Because confidentiality is super high. That's what's made me, very successful over the years. I got some of the best kept secrets in the world. And it's going to stay that way. And uh, so a lot of it is leaders, and then the rest of it is just anybody. I've worked with kids. I've worked with kids as young as 5 and 6, and I've worked with Tempest was my oldest client. She was 91 years old, and she wanted to lose weight. Right, good for her, and she did. She lost 12 pounds. Right. So I've worked with everybody from all over the world, every kind of culture, and on the inside, we're all kind of built the same way with how we think, how we feel, and how our beliefs run the show.
I love that. And I love the age range, the people, and the diversity of the people that
Hmm.
that you work with, not just in age, but also in professional or personal aspects.
Or culturally. Yeah. Yeah.
Culturally, exactly.
Hmm.
So, how does the way of leading show up differently for someone who is in a leadership position and hasn't worked with you, and then they've come to work with you, and the after? So, what does that before and after look like?
That's a great question. So I can share a story with you. I got brought in to do a program for a company president named Troy. And he said that his company was a very powerful team of mercenaries, because it was a 100% sales organization, and they were cutthroat, and they were even competing with each other all the time. And it was kind of a hostile environment. And so he felt that if people were more supportive, then they could grow faster. So he wanted me to help them somehow with their culture. And so I noticed as I was talking to him that when he talked about himself personally, he talked about his family, he talked about growing up on a farm, he talked about his values, but I didn't see any pictures of his family. I didn't see any drawings from his kids or anything like that. And as I got to know him better, because he was a really kind, caring guy, but he also, you could tell he just always had this wall up around him. And as we got to know each other, he would start to share that he had, he said this himself. So, but he had said that, when I grew up, my parents loved me, but they didn't show it. They didn't express it. So they didn't really say it much. We didn't get hugs, right? We were always told what we need to be doing better, so we were prepared for the real world. And he says, so now, when you are out there and you're telling people that we need to compliment each other, he says, that makes me really uncomfortable. In fact, I don't compliment people because I don't need them. And I'm like, well, just because you don't need it doesn't mean that others don't. Right? So he was very transactional. And a lot of leaders are. In fact, a lot of leaders have these beliefs that you can't be close to your people or you lose control. They won't respect you, that you have to always be tough. You have to always never show weakness. You never admit where you're wrong. And that is what breaks trust, right? That lack of vulnerability causes other people to not feel safe either. And then they are afraid to admit when they're wrong, or they're afraid to ask for training, or they're afraid they're going to get ridiculed when they make a mistake, which causes them to make mistakes. So it's the problem with being very transactional. So I helped him upgrade his beliefs and helped him to feel like caring about people in this way and being demonstrative about that and catching people doing things right and using my acronym of love, LUV, listen, understand, and validate, that when you're going through life validating people, that you're going to get more of what you want, because what you celebrate, people replicate. And the only thing most people really are celebrating are their mistakes and what they're doing wrong. And so guess what you get more of? More weeds. Right? A lot of leaders are standing around watering the weeds and then complaining that they have so many of them. Oh, our people don't care. Our people are lazy. Our people don't want to learn. Maybe it's your leadership approach. Okay. So, because people follow their leaders. So anyway, that's a long answer. But what we did was we upgraded those beliefs, and then Troy really took a hold of this, and he became so much more open and vulnerable, and was. I remember I came in one day and the door to his office was removed. He said, we got an open door policy, and I don't want anybody to be confused by that. The door was literally removed from the hinges, right? He said, someone can hear our conversations. We're transparent. Someone can walk in at any time. It's okay. By the end of our time together, I was with him. He hired me to train all his managers and then everybody in the company. And they went from 75 million to 135 million while I was there, and, increased their EBITDA. I mean, they did so many things. Their survey scores, their leadership, do I trust my leaders, went from 43% to 96%. Right. So the KPIs and the metrics are there. So if people think that this soft skills training doesn't improve the bottom line, they would be incorrect, because it most certainly does. And what happens is not only do you become transactional, but you become transformational. And that's when the magic happens.
I love that. What a beautiful example and story to illustrate the power of upgrading beliefs and changing your mindset, and how the ripple effect of doing so just in one person. It just continues throughout an organization.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll tell you what stops a lot of leaders, especially high performers. They think that if I get in their head, that I'm going to mess up their mojo, right? They have this real fear, especially if they hear the word hypnosis. They're like, I'm out, right? Which is why I started calling myself a mind architect, a peak performance mind architect. Most people in the world know me as a celebrity hypnotist because I've just been doing it for 3 decades, right? Helping super successful people take it to the next level. But a lot of high performers feel like this is what got me here. This is what helped me build $1 billion company. I don't want you messing with that formula. And I'm like, well, you're just comparing to yourself from where you were to where you want to be. We're not going to take anything away that's making you successful. We're just going to remove the parking brakes that could take you to the next level, right? As Jim Collins said, what got you here won't get you there, right? So this isn't about messing up your mojo. This is about accelerating, enhancing, expanding your capacity. And not just through you, but how you connect with others. Because a lot of leaders have a really difficult time trusting people. And so they bottleneck the scalability of their company because of that lack of trust. And they don't know how to change it. And they think that keeping that intact is what's making them successful. So it's a huge trap. And a lot of people never get out of it. And it's too bad, because it doesn't, it holds them back, but more, it holds everybody else back who could have experienced so much more success, but were blocked because of the fears of their leaders.
So true, so true. How has your definition of leadership changed over the years?
I didn't know much about leadership. I didn't know much about corporate America. I came from cornfields as well. And so I was a blue collar kid. Everybody in my family was an electrician or worked at the steel mill. And so I thought I was going to do that too. But I didn't like getting that dirty. That's not true. I was always dirty into something, but I just wanted to feel as, you know, how can I make a difference? And as I got into corporate America, I was shocked at how dysfunctional so many teams are, because a lot of families, most families are dysfunctional in a lot of ways. And so your work family, no surprise that you bring all those adults together, they bring all their issues together, and then you have the same kind of people problems. And so, I would walk into big fancy buildings and I would see these glass cases with customer service awards and how we take care of our people and everything. And then I would talk to the people and they're like, yeah, I don't feel that way. And so there was a very big disconnect. And the bigger the company, the bigger the disconnect, because the people at the very top are not on the front lines anymore. And there's layers and layers of managers and everybody's trying to protect their job. And so there's all kinds of miscommunication and dysfunction. And a lot of times it can be cleared up so easy, but people aren't seeing it. Too many blind spots. And so, and I used to think that you should go in and as a leader, you should just be transformational, right? And I found that that's not the case. You need to be transactional too. You need to be good at what you do. You need to have the right people in the right positions. You need to understand that visionaries are going to always get lost in details. They're not going to appreciate details because they're big picture people. You need operators who are going to be very detailed oriented, and operators are always going to be frustrated by visionaries because they feel like they don't care, they're not paying attention, right? So there's all these misconceptions, all these unconscious biases, and I just keep it simple and say it's beliefs. And if you really want to be a great leader, which means you just got to be one step ahead of someone else so you can show them what you've learned, then you got to be a belief hunter and teach people to be wisdom collectors. So if you can really understand what's driving people, what do you have to believe to think the way you think, to behave the way you're behaving? What would you have to believe? Not just what you got to think in the moment, but go farther. What would you ultimately have to believe? And if you can find that and you upgrade that belief, it immediately changes behavior and it's sustainable. The biggest thing people complain about is, well, I did leadership training and everybody was great for about a month and then it went right back to what we were doing again. That's because you didn't change the beliefs. You just cut some weeds.
So true. And I just love that. Do you think there's, I guess, some sort of resistance to diving deep, or is it just a lack of awareness, do you think, that most people have? And that's sort of the roadblock into really digging deep and changing the beliefs.
That's a great observation, Karen. Yeah, it's both, right? What is resistance? Resistance is the fear that somehow it could get worse. I mean, if we knew it was going to be better, why would we resist? Right? But people resist because, they think that we're going to lose time. We're going to spend money. It's not going to really change anything. We got more important things to do. If I pull people off the clock or off the phone, then they're not getting their work done, and that's going to put us all behind instead of learning how to optimize. That's the same mindset as, I know my car's almost out of gas, but I don't have time to get to the gas station because I got to go to get to this meeting, and now you're at the end side of the road, right? Because you needed to fill up. High performance race cars, when they're built to run around the track, right? But they all got to take pit stops. If they don't take pit stops to refuel, retread, then they don't finish the race. And so the pit stop is equally important as zipping around the track. But people don't get that. And so they haven't been taught that. So the last 20 years, there's been a lot of talk around culture and belonging and the importance for emotional intelligence and leadership, training and things like that. So it's been talked about more than ever before, but there's still a lot of resistance around it. Only the most high functioning, best teams and companies are actually doing it. And that's why they are the most high performing, successful teams. Everybody else is still just, doing whatever they always did. That's a big belief, right? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But it is broke, you're just ignoring it, right? And then, you know, I had one guy tell me that success covers a lot of sins. It's okay that we sin because we're successful, right? And so there's so many limiting beliefs like that. So I think It's a lack of awareness of what's possible. And then also a huge amount of resistance that comes from fear, even though people wouldn't call it fear, they would call it pressure, deadlines, and responsibility.
And when you talk about fear, do you think it's just the perception of fear of change and change being viewed as a negative, or that we're going to lose something, and rather than looking at the gains, we're looking at the loss?
Exactly. It's so common. I call it playing not to lose instead of playing to win. We're so busy playing not to lose. How do I not get hurt? How do I not get rejected? How do I not get embarrassed or humiliated? How do I not get fired? Right? Instead of, how can I continue to grow and win and succeed and add value and learn and transform? Right? So most of us are playing not to lose in life. I know I did for a long time, which means that even when you're winning, it will feel like you're not. I was working with a guy that hired me to coach him, and he was making $3 million a year, and he was scared to death he was going to run out of money. So we think we have this number in our head that we have to have, and then that will make us feel peaceful and safe inside, and it's an illusion. Because as soon as I had more money in the bank than ever, and all I could think of is that I was going to lose it, that something was going to happen, I was going to get blindsided, I was going to run out. Right. And so it caused me to constantly be stressed out. Even when I was in the best place financially ever, I couldn't enjoy it because I just kept bracing for the rug to get yanked out from underneath me because my brain says that's happened before. There's good reason for that. And so we start to use all of these experiences in the past as justification for why we have to keep our guards up. So, yeah, I mean, you said it in the question. Why would we be afraid of change unless we thought it was going to end up being worse?
So true, so true. I think, yeah. And as you said, we all struggle with that, and myself, obviously.
Mhm.
What question do you think leaders should be asking themselves more often but rarely do?
Am I happy? I don't think a lot of business owners or the people in leadership positions think in terms of happy. Or I know entrepreneurs don't. Um, Instead, we think of it in terms of progress and momentum. Not am I happy or am I sad, but am I making progress? Do I feel like where I am and where I should be are in the same place? And that answer is almost always no. You make 1 million, you think you should make 2 million next year, right? So, or you made $1 million at 50 years old, and someone who was 15 years old on the internet, social media, said they just made $1 million, and now you feel like a loser, right? So this comparing ourselves is always causing us to feel less than, always pushing that old button, that old belief inside that we're not enough. And so I think that if we can pause and ask ourselves, am I feeling fulfilled right now? And if I'm not, that solving that problem becomes the path. I always tell people, they're like, how do you create a breakthrough? And I'm like, your biggest breakthroughs are hiding in the places you don't want to go. So if you just look at where you're resisting, you should go there. Once you go through that door, really wonderful opportunities and growth can occur. And then you're like, I wish I would have done this sooner. So, we've got to just keep kind of pausing. That's why I talk about creating peaceful achievers, because you're still going to excel, you're still going to grow, you're still going to expand, right? Because that's who you are. We're just going to do it with more peace instead of pressure,
I love that. Peaceful achievers. I've never heard that term, but I really, yeah, there's something that really
right? They don't usually
resonates.
go together.
What's one truth about leadership or business that you would share with new entrepreneurs?
One truth about business or leadership that I would share with entrepreneurs. You really got to focus on being others focused instead of making it always about your performance, right? Because we always make it about ourselves. What are they going to think of me? Am I going to be enough? Are they going to like me? What if I say something stupid? And so we're constantly judging ourselves so critically that we end up sabotaging ourselves, right? Or we're so focused on ourselves that we're not paying attention to what our customers are saying or the people that we're leading are doing. And so, we're always filtering the conversation from the point of what's in it for me instead of how can I understand where you're coming from? How can I empower you? How can I help you win? The great Zig Ziglar would always say, if you help enough people get to where they want to go, then they'll help you get anywhere you want to go. right? And so, but we don't trust that or believe that. And so it's all about us and what we need to do. And we have this hustle culture, and we just got to work harder and kill ourselves to get there and take no prisoners, and all of this baloney that just causes a lot of stress, a lot of collateral damage that burns people out. And that causes you to just become transactional like everybody else. You're just playing the game again, right? So if you could focus on developing yourself as a person as much as you are focusing on advancing your career, then you're going to end up in a much better position down the road.
Piggybacking off of that, looking back, what's one piece of advice you'd give yourself earlier on as a leader? Would it be to be more others focused, or is there something else that you would?
Yeah, I would share a lot of stuff with my younger self. I would let myself know that I'm already enough, that I don't have to chase success or approval, because when you chase something, it runs away. You have to attract it. You've got to draw it to you by focusing on knowing that you're already enough. I'd make myself feel more safe and loved and worthy to be able to um, allow good things and opportunities into my life, because there was so many issues that I had around self-confidence or even around money. I had a very difficult time charging people for my services or raising my prices. I didn't think that they would pay me. I started out charging $30 an hour, and I thought people were going to laugh in my face about that because I'm used to $10 an hour jobs. And there's no way that I could talk to someone for an hour and they give me $30, right? And I had to change that around. And so I had to learn how to ask for what I want and feel good about it. I learned that I had to make more deposits than withdrawals. So if I meet someone new, I'm usually trying to help them more before I ever ask them for anything. If you keep helping me for something and then you ask me a favor, I'm definitely going to help you out. All right. But most people are just takers, they're not givers. So they're just always asking and asking, but they're not doing anything to give. And usually it's because they don't think they have anything to give, which is another limiting belief. So, uh, so I think all of that, and then, getting support. Don't try to do it by yourself. You need coaches, people in your life like you, Karen, because you'll help people see their blind spots that they won't see on their own. They just won't recognize it. You can't see the label when you're in the bottle. And so you need professionals who are very skilled like you, who are going to be able to pick it up right away, and you'll notice it, and you'll have tools, and you're going to be supportive, where we beat ourselves up and down all day long. So being more loving, finding people that you can learn from and grow, and then just keep focusing on doing your very best to be others focused is the advice that I would give and do.
I love that. And I think that that's advice that's applicable to anybody, anywhere in their journey, entrepreneurial or personally. All these limiting beliefs, especially around self-worth and value, and being able to charge for what you are worth and the services that you bring. Do you think we're culturally conditioned? Is it a
Mhm.
symptom of society, or just our families? How does
All
that
of
all?
the above. Yeah, brilliant question. All of the above. I think that where you're born, who you grow up with, what your religion tells you, right? What the politics are around you, what country you live in. I think all of that is influencing you, because you're kind of like a sponge when you come into this world, and you're just soaking up the values, beliefs, and ideas of those around you. And then that's why I say so many of the beliefs that we have aren't our own. We absorb them usually from our caregivers first. And so we have these generational wounds and limitations that we've just kind of passed down, that we just keep suffering from and creating the same problems. So every generation says, I'm not doing that, and they swing the other way, and then their kids, I'm not doing that, and they swing the other way. And we have a hard time as a species finding our middle, finding our balance. So, but I think loving each other and taking care of each other is always going to be a value that lifts people up. And so that's what transformational leadership's all about. That's what being others focused is all about. And when you do that, it brings more joy into your life. Now, some people get confused by that. They become so others focused because they don't take care of themselves, and that's different, right? So if you're a people pleaser, if you don't like conflict, if you are afraid to say no, if you don't want anybody to ever get mad at you or think bad about you, then you're going to make yourself a doormat. And then people are going to walk over you because you're teaching them how to treat you by how you're treating yourself. And so this isn't just sacrifice. This is about taking care of others and taking care of yourself, and then, having boundaries in place as well. And this is all something that you just learn as you go through life if you are working on spiritual development or spiritual growth or personal development or professional development, because, people are saying the same kinds of things when it comes to what good leaders are and how to be a caring, kind, compassionate human being. So the information is more easily accessible now than it was when you and I were growing up. However, there's a lot more propaganda. There's a lot more evil going around as well in the messaging. And people have to be taught, especially the younger generations, how to discern between that and how to know what's truth and and then, how they're being manipulated.
Yeah, there's, like you said, there's a lot of noise. I think there's also a level of self-awareness that has to come from an individual, and
Mm-hmm.
like you said, a level of discernment to
Mm-hmm.
to sort of separate the wheat from the chaff. What part of building your business really forced you to grow as a leader?
Well, I think all areas, you have, so, you know, so I'm a business owner and, I had a couple of employees. So it's very different, as opposed to if you are a sales manager or you are, a vice president or a CFO or something like that. So it depends on the leadership position that you're in. I know a business owner or an entrepreneur wears all the hats. So I had to learn sales, marketing, operations, fulfillment. I had to learn how to be good at my job. I had to learn how to get customers, how to take care of customers, how to get those customers to send referrals, how to build systems, how to keep customers or get new customers, and how to take care of them in such a way that they would provide glowing testimonials that I could use as social proof to keep the whole process going. Then I had to learn speaking. Then I had to learn what it was like to go on TV. And then I had to learn how to do a TED Talk. And then I had to learn how to do a podcast. And I had to learn how to write newsletters. And I had to learn how to create a blog. I mean, it just went on and on. So it's constant and never-ending learning and growth. I think if I could answer your question better, the one thing that helped me take it to the next level consistently was I hired a coach. Right? I've hired coaches for my head because I'm stubborn and I need to upgrade my beliefs. And I've hired business coaches who taught me those skills. And the way that I look at it is I'm paying to collapse timeframes. I'm paying for speed. I'm smart. I can figure this out in a couple of years, or I can pay someone a few $1,000s and figure it out in a few months. And so it's worth it to drop $10,000 or $20,000 to get training and coaching so that you can then spend the next 2 years creating an ROI on that instead of $10,000 or $20,000, losing $70,000, $100,000 in lost opportunity because you didn't know what you were doing or you didn't see your blind spots. So when I first hired a coach in 2003, I was scared to death. He was $5,000. It was a friend of mine said, you need to work with this guy. I didn't have $5,000. So someone gave me a credit card, which is insane, some bank. And so I maxed it out immediately and scared to death, having a panic attack. What have I done? Now I'm in debt, right? But I did it anyway. And I think that the most successful people are always taking those risks, calculated risks, right? And so I had to expand my comfort zone. I was way out of it, but you have to expand it. And he taught me a system. And then that system helped me to start being profitable. I had to spend even more money to run newspaper ads back at the time, but then I took that $1,000 ad spend and made $20,000. I netted $19,000 that first month. I hadn't made $19,000 ever in a month. That was half of what I was making in a year at that time. right? And it was like, what? I did not even believe that that was possible, and it was. And it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't uh, taken that leap of faith and hired that coach. And so coaching, it can be a real game changer. And you might end up having to hire a few of them because some of them aren't that great. Some of them can sell you really well, but when you get in it, they're not that good, right? And then some of them will change your life. So you just got to keep going until you find those. Find the gold through, you're in the river, you're looking for the gold, you're coming up with a whole bunch of mud. But when you hit that gold nugget,
It's payday, pay dirt. Yes, I love that. I love that. But I think you also said something really interesting, is that you looked at coaching as an ROI, right? Like it's $5,000, but there's going to be a payout at the end. And I think a
yes.
lot of people don't look to coaching or perhaps another purchase that they make. It might be systems. They don't see it
Mhm.
as an investment. They see it as a cost.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly right. Hmm.
What do you say to those people? How do you help them sort of see the potential there, right? And I think that's sort of the key too. Is there's potential, and perhaps we're looking for certainty in the results, right? If I put this kind of money down, then I want a guarantee. And of course, we know there are no guarantees in life. So how do you help someone navigate that?
Where do you get a guarantee like that then? Right. So, do you advertise? Because there's no guarantees that if you drop money on an ad that you're going to get a return, but you advertise anyway because people know that you gotta, unless you're doing it for free through social media, which takes a long time, you're going to spend it on advertising, which is more direct response. You can't guarantee you're going to get a return. In fact, they'll often tell you it takes 3 to 6 months to get a return. Hang in there, right? So but why do you advertise? Because you think that if you spend $1, you can make $2, right? So you're focusing not on it being a cost, but being an investment because you're trying to double your money. So why would it be any different for coaching? If you're upgrading your beliefs or you're learning how to communicate more effectively with other people so less mistakes are made, so people are performing at a higher level so that their close rate goes up, then you should be looking at this as an ROI. But remember what I said in the beginning, most people are playing not to lose. And so that's why they look at it as an expense instead of as, the potential for a return. So in the Bible, it shares the story about the leader that gave the three people, talons, and then so go out there, the money, go out there and multiply this for me. And the one that multiplied the most got all of it, and the one that took the one and hid it in the ground so he wouldn't lose it, he got everything taken away. So even in the Bible, it's telling us that we need to make sure that we are playing to win and to have more faith.
I love that. As we wrap up and look ahead, what are you excited to build in the next chapter for your business?
Mm. So I love helping entrepreneurs and business owners, especially in larger companies, because I know that as I help them, it's going to have that trickle down effect, right? All of a sudden, they're sending me their VPs or their general managers, and I know that that's going to have a trickle down effect because as I'm empowering them and sharing the same philosophies and removing their fears and getting them to play to win and being others focused, that they go back and they start helping other people, and then those people bring it home to their spouses, to their children, right? And so this beautiful trickle down effect where I can help 1,000 people, but I'll affect 100,000 people because of the trickle down effect, which is exactly what you're doing too by having this show and all the work that you do. So we are helping to magnify the goodness in the world by the people that we're helping. So I love that. And I also love training other therapists and coaches and change workers and healers with my One Belief Away method, because I will put it up against any method in the world. This approach is so powerful and so effective, and it works almost every time so quickly with just about any issue. Nothing's 100%, but this is so effective understanding how to upgrade the beliefs in your mental operating system, how to remove the mental malware, and then optimize the way that you think so that you reach a fuller potential. It's extraordinary. And so the more practitioners that add that tool or set of tools to their toolbox, the more effective we're going to be at helping people to remove limitation and set themselves free. You're just one belief away from your next big breakthrough.
I love that, and I love your vision. And Tim, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. Where can our listeners find you online?
You can go to timshurr.com, SHURR, or you can go to Indy, INDY, it's short for Indianapolis, indyhypnosis.com. I'm on all the social media channels, and you can find my books on Amazon, like Get Out of Your Way and One Belief Away. Thank you for asking.
And we'll be sure to link those in the show notes below. And thanks again for joining me on today's podcast.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much for your brilliant questions.
Thank you for spending your time with me today on the Leadership Lab podcast. My hope is that this conversation sparked a new perspective or reinforced something you already knew. Until next time, keep leading with curiosity and intention.